Hello everyone. Welcome back to the PurpleDon Enlightenment Hour. I am Morgan Robinson, the PurpleDon, whatever the hell you want to call me. I am here with a cup of tea and for this return episode of the Enlightenment Hour in its new weekly format. That's right, every single Sunday you will get another episode of the Enlightenment Hour starting this very Sunday. And whether that is episodes like this where it's just me talking about a topic, whether I have guests on talking about a topic, or even the guests' personal lives. Let's try and get into some of that, shall we? Or, of course, the top 5 episodes, which have been a lot of fun to do. And should the opportunity present itself, should something happen that week that calls for a top 5 episode, you will get one of those. But, as you have seen by the title of this episode, and it may come as a bit of a shock to some of you listening to this, but yes, it's true. I have started watching Star Trek. Yes, the reason I really wanted to just ramble on for a little bit about this and my first impressions of Star Trek, because it is truly the first time I have ever watched anything to do with Star Trek. I've never seen a single Star Trek film, and I have never seen a single Star Trek TV series up until I decided to say, I said to myself, I saw Star Trek on Netflix. I don't believe the US has Star Trek on Netflix, but we do here in the UK. Sorry to any big US Trek fans out there. If that even is the case, I'm not 100% sure. But yes, I saw it on Netflix. I've seen it on Netflix for quite a while now, and I've always thought, should I, because I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of hard sci-fi. People I've spoke to will know that. But I just thought this one day. Do you know what? Let's start. So on goes episode 1, which was actually the original pilot, called The Cage, I believe, of Star Trek, the original series. And it kind of threw me off at the start because the original pilot, there's no signs of William Shatner anywhere. There's no Kirk, there's no Bones, there's no Sulu, there's no Uhura. There's basically nobody, but Spock is still there. Mr. Spock's still there in the original pilot. So that kind of threw me off right at the start, but I kept going. And I've got to say, I think I'm about 14 episodes into the into season 1 of the original series. I'm actually really enjoying it. I must have thought by putting it on that I would get some sort of enjoyment out of it, but I can honestly say I did not think I would be getting as much enjoyment out of it as I seem to be. Because I did think it was more sort of hard sci-fi. And I class... Now, I don't know if this is right, but this is my own personal sort of classification of the genre of sci-fi. I class hard sci-fi as that very sort of scientific terminology and techie terminology. Kind of like, I feel like you have to be in the know. I feel like you have to be in the tech world or the science world to actually understand what's going on, because they use that much sort of terminology. But yeah, I think I like Star Trek, the original series, because in 1966 when it premiered, the most technological term was computer, which is, about my level of technical expertise. So I'm right there. I'm okay. I did not realise that, to me at least, so far, Star Trek seems much less a science show, which is what I originally thought it was, which is what made me put off watching it for so long. And I know, don't judge before you've seen something, but this is one of the cases where I did do that. Definitely. But yeah, it seems like almost a more philosophical kind of show. It asks a lot of questions. It's very, very thematic. At least that's what I get from it. It's more along the lines, to me, like, not exactly like, but 1951's The Day the Earth Stood Still, which, on the sort of surface, looks like aliens coming to Earth. One of those type of sci-fi films. Aliens come to Earth in it, but it's a very sort of political film. It's got a very, very deep message in it. And I think Star Trek is definitely along those same lines. It's a reason I very much enjoy The Day the Earth Stood Still. I would put it as one of my all-time top favourite sci-fi films. And I do tend to say that I'm not the biggest fan of sci-fi because I'm not the biggest fan of science as an actual thing. And that's not to say like I don't believe in science. That's a ridiculous statement. Of course I do. But I don't know whether this stems from education and science classes, which I was never the biggest fan of. Maybe it stems from that. I don't know. But what I do really enjoy about, or what I have been really enjoying about Star Trek, the original series so far, is these questions it's asking, is these sort of deep themes that it's going into, that I did not expect. Now, I know that there is a new Star Trek series out now. I think it's airing, or it's about to air. I think it might be about to air. Star Trek Discovery. I've got no sort of intention of watching that. I'm gonna stick with carrying on this original series, and then I might go to Next Generation, because who doesn't love Patrick Stewart? But this isn't necessarily this episode isn't necessarily in line with the release of Star Trek Discovery. I'm going to talk about Star Trek. But again, because I've sort of heard Star Trek Discovery this, Star Trek Discovery that, look, it's on this weird, you have to pay for it network. Although, again, this is a thing. In the UK, Netflix has Star Trek Discovery on it, and I know that's not the case in the US. I know you have to pay for CBS All Access or whatever it is to actually watch it. So that's not necessarily the best thing. But we're not here to talk about Star Trek Discovery. I just think that maybe because I've heard a lot of Star Trek talk in the past sort of month, I think the reason I may have decided to finally start watching was because I've just heard so much. I've just heard the name Star Trek, Star Trek, Star Trek all over again. And I just thought, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to do it. Talking about the thematic elements, I think I just got done watching the first two-parter, the Menagerie, I think it was called, I want to say, which was strange, but kind of really really impressive because now, I believe that the original pilot of Star Trek, that episode called The Cage, which I mentioned before, didn't originally air. It was an unaired pilot. And this two-parter is sort of... It almost felt like it was the show's way of saying, yeah, there's this episode that you're not seeing yet. Because obviously this was in, 66? So there was no way to watch the unaired pilot because it was unaired. So I felt like this was the show's way, this was Gene Roddenberry's way of saying, I wanted to tell this story on air, so I'm going to do that. Very, very interesting episode. It's sort of the question behind this, what I felt was, is it better to live in a worse reality or to live in a better fantasy world? Which is incredibly interesting. I was literally sat there just going, wow, this is going deep. Well done, Star Trek. I did not expect this much. I'll keep saying this. I did not expect this much enjoyment from myself out of Star Trek. But I mean, what a philosophical question that is to ask. It's wonderful. And this is why this is my sort of favourite type of sci-fi, because it's less sciencey and more, like I said, philosophical. I'll keep using that word. But yeah, I mean, in this two-parter, it's about the former captain of the Enterprise, Christopher Pike, I believe his name is, who is in the real world now a complete sort of... Well, he can't speak, he can't move, he's alive. The only way he can speak is by pressing a button, yes or no. His mind is still active, but his body is completely dead. And this entire episode or two-parter is the original pilot, which does have Captain Pike as the lead. It is rather difficult to explain because it almost feels like a meta episode, especially having had the ability to watch the original unaired pilot as the first episode on Netflix. It feels like kind of a meta episode because Spock is basically on trial of his own choosing because he was taking the current sort of lifeless body but active mind Captain Pike back to this planet that was in the original pilot. But apparently this planet is completely off limits. There's a death penalty if you make communication with it because it's said to be that dangerous. But Spock is insistent upon the fact that he takes his former captain to this planet. But even though it's illegal. So there's this whole sort of trial thing. It is really, really well done. It's a very, very interesting story. It's probably the best 2 episodes I have watched so far of the show. And to be honest, with the exception of maybe one really, really weird one, I've enjoyed the first half of season 1 of Star Trek: The Original Series very much. There's these weird there's these aliens that cast illusions, and this is where this sort of, is it better to live in a fantasy world comes from. Very, very good episode, to be fair. Very, very charming sci-fi. Very good sets, actually. I will say that in that episode. Like the not on location, but outdoor sets, or maybe on planet sets, let's say. Really, really good. Like the colours, well, the colours throughout the show are very, very vivid. It's such a colourful show. It's ridiculous. It feels like imagine Hammer films. Imagine the brightness of the colour in Hammer films times like 50, and then you get Star Trek. It's like a kaleidoscope of colour. It's easy to see why children would be very sort of fixed on this, as I imagine they were in the late 60s. I mean, I'm not watching it for the pretty colours, but they're a nice addition. As far as actors go, I mean, always in the back of my mind when I've been watching this is the fact that William Shatner just hates people, and really does not like. Basically, and here's where we're going to get into interesting territory now, because I'm going to bring up Star Wars. Not to bring up a Star Trek versus Star Wars competition, because, Jesus, we don't need any more competitions. Not everything has to be a contest. There doesn't have to be winners and losers in everything to do with films ever. DC, Marvel, again, Star Trek, Star Wars, you don't need it. But, you look at someone like Mark Hamill, who loves Star Wars and loves Star Wars fans, and he's such a nerd himself. And he is Luke Skywalker. He is the face of Star Wars. And then you just completely contrast that with someone like William Shatner, who, very much like Mark Hamill, does a wonderful job as James Kirk. But I just know in the back of my mind that, yeah, Shatner hates Star Trek. He hates Star Trek fans. He doesn't like people. He's a horrible person. Which sort of, if I'm not necessarily fully on board, I mean, I'm not saying on board with the episode, but, if I'm maybe more casually watching an episode, I'd just be thinking, yeah, Shatner doesn't like this, and it's always in the back of my mind, and it's not nice knowing that the lead of a show or a film, whoever it is, in real life, who does such a good job as well. I must say that he does such a good job. He's so likeable as Kirk. He's such a charming character. But having that knowledge that the actor is, for want of a better word, unpleasant, is disappointing, let's say. Now, Leonard Nimoy, the late Leonard Nimoy, is also very, 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 very good. And, the man's a sci-fi legend for a reason, isn't he? I know he was much more into fan interaction and all that business when he was alive. But yeah, I mean, he's just wonderful. I mean, I feel like it's almost unnecessary to say that these actors are wonderful, because, the show's so old. The show has is a legendary show for a reason. There wouldn't be necessarily, bad things in it. I mean, yes, there's some lower quality episodes, like this ridiculous sort of... I swear it was about mail order brides, which was ridiculous. I swear I watched that with some really shifty looking businessmen. I mean, you get episodes like that are just like, what's going on? But then it can pull right back with something like this two-parter, the Menagerie, or the one before that, the Corbomite something or other, where, yeah, that was a good episode. Star Trek fans will know what I'm talking about. That was a good episode as well. I feel like it's really hitting its stride now. 3D chess, I love that. I'd be poor at it, to be honest. It takes a lot of thought, but I'd give that a go. I'd give 3D chess a go at some point. Much prefer, standard chessboard chess. But that's a thing. Here's another sort of weird thing that has been in my mind throughout this. 4 being, made in the 60s. It seems almost a very sort of progressive show. And like I said, this seems to go back to its sort of, to the themes and that are brought up, but it seems very sort of, it seems rather liberal, which is obviously, as far as I'm concerned, a great thing. Whether this is due to the sort of, yes, the late 60s being a culturally quite, at least youthful liberal time. Maybe Star Trek just latched onto that. Maybe Star Trek was a whole part of that. I don't know the backstory behind creating Star Trek. I don't know what Gene Roddenberry was like. I've no idea. I'm sure many Star Trek fans could tell me this, and please do. Absolutely. But yeah, I think with the whole very colourful, very sort of psychedelic, I used the word kaleidoscope before. It seems like, it seems like everything's fitting there. I do know for a fact that Star Trek, the original series, was the first television show, I believe, to show an interracial kiss. I believe that's the case. So, I mean, there you go. Another thing I've found quite interesting about it is it seems like a very bingeable show. Like, I can understand why this is on Netflix. Not that, of course, it's not anything... Of course, binging wasn't on the minds of the creators of Star Trek. Binge culture came about, 40 plus years after Star Trek aired. But I don't know. It seems like to me a very bingeable show. I guess because for the most part it's an episodic show. Rather than, it doesn't have, or it doesn't appear, at least at the minute, to have a full season arc. This two-parter that I keep bringing up is the first sort of big story arc in the show, and it felt like really almost the first episode or episodes that almost, I don't want to say mattered to the entire scope of the show, but it felt like they would have the most effect on sort of characters later on, and what, they're going to be like with each other. Whether that is the case, I don't know, because this two-parter was the last episodes that I have watched as of the time of this recording. But yes, I don't feel like I even have to say much more. I'm very, very pleasantly surprised that I'm enjoying it as much as I am. I know a few people that will be very pleased to hear that I'm enjoying it as much as I am. And yeah, I think when I'm done with this, with the original series, which I know is quite a good few episodes, so it'll be a while yet. But I think I'm gonna do the movies and Next Generation as well, and we'll see how we go from there. Yeah, what more is there left to say? I know there hasn't been any Vulcan Salute Live Long and Prosper yet, because I think a couple of weeks ago it was maybe in the 50th anniversary. I think it was the 50th anniversary of the phrase "Live Long and Prosper," which turns up, I believe, if I'm remembering this right, from what I saw on Twitter, appears in the season 2, episode 1. So I think there's 30 episodes in season 1. So I've got a good while till I get to any sort of iconic Star Trek things, I think. But no, I'm very, very much enjoying it. I really kind of wanted to talk about this. I feel like this is a good positive return to recording Enlightenment Hour. I'm going to try and keep at least episodes like this. I'm going to try and keep them under that half hour, just about half hour maybe. But yeah, I will say I have found myself, as I often do with television shows or even films that I like very much, I have found myself repeating lines from the show, not in like real life, but just after they've been said, just in sort of, now I'm gonna try and perfect my James Kirk impression. I don't know. I like to do that, but it seems a very, very quotable show. Yeah, I'm definitely enjoying it, and it is really, really, really surprised me. And I think that is going to do us for this return episode of the Enlightenment Hour to Star Trek, I will say, or what I'm hoping at least, from the next few. So that is going to do it, I think, for this return episode of the Enlightenment Hour to Star Trek. I say, keep being less sciencey and more philosophical, because well done, Star Trek. You've surprised me. And yes, guys, please, if you did enjoy this episode, be sure to share it around and tell Star Trek fans, and tell your friends and your family, and shout it on the street. If you go into the city, hand out little pieces of paper that say, "Watch PurpleDon stuff." That'd be really nice. I'd be most appreciative, and I will give you a online virtual hug if that's possible. But yes, you can of course also sub to this YouTube channel if you are on the YouTube, or if you are on iTunes, please sub to the feed and leave a rate and review, because that'll help a lot as well, and I'll be appreciative of that as well. I'll be really, really appreciative. yes, get ready for weekly Enlightenment Hour episodes. That's all I'm going to say to that. Hopefully I can get a few nice guests on. I want to try. I've got people in my head that I could do very, very good episodes with. Pretty big guests as far as I'm concerned, at least. Anyway, so keep your fingers crossed for me, guys. But yes, please do all that sharing and subscribing business if you are feeling generous. And you can check me out on Twitter and Instagram at the PurpleDon. What else can you do? I don't know. I've no guest on, so I don't have to let them plug anything. Guys, thank you, as always, very much for watching. And until next time, no, I'm not going to say that iconic Star Trek line because I've not heard it yet. But, goodbye.